Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel. We're talking about underrated or under the radar, underappreciated, whichever verbiage you want to use there, portal pickups for the Longhorns. And CJ, we're doing this because Pro Football Focus put out some information on Bo Masco. And since 2004, he's the second highest graded cornerback in the Big Ten. And that really surprised me because you start looking at the individual numbers. And look, the one thing that hurt him playing at Rutgers is teams didn't really have a reason to throw the ball against Rutgers because you could run it and pretty much do whatever you want. And we know that Rutgers program, the Big Ten, is a struggle for them. But CJ, I was really surprised. But the fact that, he played for Mark Orfeh, we know the tie between Mark Orfeh and Will Muschamp. Like, the more you look into it, it makes sense. Is he the most underrated, underappreciated, under the radar portal pickup, or is there somebody else you're thinking about?
I think Masco is probably the safe bet for this. And I say that because, you hear a lot of where these guys come from and, some of the accolades and achievements that they bring with them to the University of Texas. And, for Masco, I think what is lost is, he's coming from Rutgers. And that kind of has a stench on it, to be honest. And what's funny is, you look at his achievements and what's mentioned around him, and being an all-conference honorable mention in the Big Ten is nothing to laugh at, right? That is a significant achievement in a conference with 18 teams to be one of, the 7 or 8 best cornerbacks in the entire conference, recognized by the coaches. That's something that I think has gone certainly under the radar and underappreciated so far. And to be completely honest, I kind of thought about this about a month ago, and I'm starting to vocalize it more and more as we start to hear feedback about these guys once they're on campus. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if Masco is your cornerback one when it comes to this fall for Texas.
Yeah, and, that's one thing. And look, we still don't know exactly what the plan is going to be because, we've said it before here on the channel, say it again. Will Muschamp typically has preferred a bigger player, a little more physical stature at that nickel position than what Grayson Littleton brings to the table. So do you move somebody else to that star position? And we don't even know if Muschamp's going to call it the star or whatever, what he's going to call it in his defense. Do you keep Littleton there? Do you move into corner? And I think, CJ, I'm starting to wrap my head around the idea of, number one, Bo Masco and Cade Phillips could be a pretty salty cornerback combo. And number two, I feel like the chip on the shoulder should be there for Kobe Black and Warren Roberson, 2 guys that flirted with the portal, ultimately decided to come back, that at points last year flashed a little bit. They both had their struggles, but I just feel like the more we dig into the Bo Masco move, the more I like it. If nothing else, the competition it's going to generate in spring practice.
You're absolutely right. And with Masco specifically, over 1,100 career snaps as a cornerback. He actually took about 180 in 2024 in that slot position. So again, we talk about, position versatility in the secondary. It could be an option, right? But as we just talked about, when you're already in the conversation for being one of the better outside corners in one of the Power 4 conferences, it makes sense to keep him at that spot. Mm-hmm. But to your point, the retention of Wardell Mack, Warren Roberson returning, you have plenty of bodies right now to kind of piece together how you see fit in the secondary. And who's to know if there's also additional movement from a cornerback to a safety room for one of these guys. Like we'll have to wait and see. Of course, safety is going to be a position, Jeff, that's pretty thin given some of the numbers in spring football. So is there movement right now? All I know is the numbers at cornerback are very healthy, and that's with offseason attrition as well. There should be plenty of competition. And what better wide receiving room could you draw up to determine who your best cornerbacks are than what Texas will go against every day in the spring?
No doubt. We'll see if one of those guys ends up making the move to safety, who ends up in the nickel position. But again, the Bo Masco move, just from a guy that is going to understand what Mark Orfeh wants, and in turn should then understand what Will Muschamp and Blake Gideon want. I like to pick up. So, CJ, when we look at other underrated, underappreciated, undervalued portal pickups, there was one guy I know you wanted to talk about, and I'm with you on this one because just from a scheme fit standpoint and what they're going to ask him to do, Michael Massunis is a really nice pickup.
I love it. I'm a big fan of this one. I've gone back over the last week and started to watch more of Michigan State. Let me tell you, it's a bore. It is not fun. That offense is very, very boring to watch, but you start to see a little bit of the pieces that made Texas covet Michael Massunis the way that they did. And again, we saw a lot of 12 personnel at Michigan State. And, at times Massunis wasn't necessarily that go-to option, right? He only had 19 receptions for 232 yards. He had 3 touchdowns of those 19 receptions. One thing that kind of surprised me, however, he only was targeted 21 times. So that's a pretty darn good conversion rate from targets to receptions, 19 of 21, but it's the inline blocking. It's where Michigan State used him. It's how they used him. There was a lot of leakage. There was a lot of, drawn up red zone opportunities for him as well, but it's the way in which they used him as an inline guy with 94% of his snaps, Jeff, coming as that kind of nub right next to an offensive tackle, that I look at how he will translate to Texas and say, this is a seamless transition and will allow Nick Townsend or an Amari Winston or whoever else in that room to really then start being utilized and weaponized more in the passing game.
I'm gonna give you an underrated pickup, and it's as I've talked a lot about Ian Gerard, and I think his ability, along with Zion Williams, the ability those two guys are going to have for Will Muschamp to play an odd front and mix your fronts and be more diverse, I think it's going to be huge. I don't think Hollywood Smothers has gotten enough love for being a quality back. And I've been kind of like you with Massunis, CJ, the more I dig into Hollywood Smothers, the more I watch some game film, the more I love what he brings to the table. And I've talked about it, I really do believe it. If you look at what Sark's run game has been, kind of that wide zone dominant run game, I think he's a perfect plug and play back for that. But I was kind of thinking, you watch the film and between the tackles, I'm not going to call him a thumper, but he's got such good contact balance that he can kind of work between tackles, a little bit similar to Trey Wisner, but I think he gives you a little more juice than Trey Wisner. I went back and looked at it, CJ, on B gap runs last year. That's to the left side and the right side. He's over almost 8.2 yards per carry, about 4 yards per carry after contact on B gap runs, which you wouldn't think of that for a guy that's a sub 200-pound back. Right. But where he really makes his money, you look at around left end, which would be right off the tight end, right off where Michael Massunis would be setting that edge in the run game. He was 4.8 yards after contact per attempt. 26 of his 49 forced missed tackles were running off the left end, running off the tight end. So, yeah, he's going to give you the juice you want in the wide zone run game, but he's also got the ability, CJ, to be kind of and again, you wouldn't think of it looking at his body type, but he's got such good contact balance and runs so tough that he can be an every down running back, I think, even in the SEC.
I like that pick a lot. And, you see why, obviously, Alabama went after him so heavily. And Texas kind of swooping in and stealing from Alabama left a bad taste in a lot of folks out in Tuscaloosa. So, to your point, those are 2 of the top programs in the country, 2 of the top in the SEC, all pursuing heavily of Hollywood Smothers. I got one more for you. And I'm trying to beat the comments because I know they're coming, Jeff. Anytime we talk about under the radar kind of guys that aren't appreciated enough, they always say, where the love for the specialists? Why don't we talk about special teams? It's a big part of the game. I got you right here. I'm going with the punter, Mac Chumento out of Florida State. And, on first glance, his numbers aren't necessarily jumping off the page, right? He had about a 42.7 yards per attempt average last year, 41.0 net average, which is kind of where I wanted to focus on. 28 punts last year, Jeff. Only 3 of them were returned.
Interesting.
I thought that was interesting as well. And that tells me, and what we've seen with Jeff Banks and, this style of punting over the last few years is, hey, we got good gunners. We got great athletes on the outside. Just make sure that they're in a position to make a tackle or make a play on the football whenever the punt lands. And what I mean by that is we've seen it for years, whether it would be Jack Boomeister last year, Ryan Sanborn the year before. Texas downing kicks inside the 20 is something that I was really encouraged by. 16 of his 28 punts last year were fair caught. Only 1 touchback as well. So someone that is utilizing the field and pinning teams deep, that's a weapon for Texas and something that I'm not sure has gotten enough attention as well.
Yeah, no, we talked about it, like the 2024 defense. One of the things that made them even more special than they were, they didn't get a ton of help from field position, the punter being able to flip field position. They just didn't have that in 24 like they had with Ryan Sanborn in 23 and what Jack Boomeister did last season to help the defense. I'll say this about Chimento, though, and this is kind of when you get into the nuance, you get a little granular on special teams. if let's say Mikey Bukowskis wins the punting job as a true freshman, you're better off winning it because he had to compete for it, not just because, well, he was the only guy we had. And I think if nothing else, if Chimento can let Bukowskis kind of earn that job, then great. Or if he ends up being the punter, I think that's good too, because you'd push come to shove, you'd rather have an experienced punter. Then you get into the nuance of, okay, you brought in Gianni Spedic from Memphis to be your place kicker. And can you save some of his leg if Jake Collette, who we know has a big leg, can handle being the kickoff guy right out of the gate? And he kind of gets his feet wet that way. So I'm with you. You said this a while back, and I agree with you. I'll give you credit for it. Every year you should go take specialists out of the portal. There's no reason for you to roll the dice with freshmen, because even the best freshmen, if Michael Dixon and Justin Tucker and guys like that can struggle as freshmen, anybody can struggle as freshmen. So take the veteran guys. But no, I'm picking up what you're putting down on Mac Chimento and getting some veteran guys on special teams. So we mentioned Chimento. You mentioned Chimento, Massunis. I've talked a lot about Ian Jafar on the channel, Masco, Smothers. Anybody else that you want to mention before we wrap this up?
Look, I think it's not going to draw the attention right away in 2026, but Jonte Newman, I mean, I liked him a lot out of high school. I know he spent the 1 year at Texas A&M. He's just basically a ball of clay. Still, even with a year under his belt at the college level, a guy that you can mold. I'm eager to see, the true availability of Trevor Goosby in spring football. How much does Texas push him? And as a result, who is that third option? Is Kojo ready to go? My best bet is saying no. So if you can find a swing third tackle beyond Jaden Chapman, maybe Jonte Newman has a more immediate path to that second unit than anticipated. So that's something I'm keeping an eye on moving forward as well.
Good stuff, CJ. Thank you for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. If you're not a member, over on ontexasfootball.com, just head over to the website, jump in the conversations. Anytime we get news, notes, and nuggets, we're posting it over there first. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, anytime we go live or drop a video, you're not missing any of our Longhorn coverage. For CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time.
Welcome.